So it's certainly no secret that I love dungeon crawler board games. There's just something about creating a character, going into a dungeon, grabbing that loot, fighting the boss monster, and essentially having a role-playing like experience, or Dungeons and Dragons, D&D experience, condensed down into an hour or an hour and a half. And I was recently asked, Fritz, out of all the dungeon crawlers that you enjoy, what is your number one recommendation? What would you recommend to someone where they're into board gaming, they've got a board game collection, and they're looking to diversify out into kind of the dungeon crawler theme in there? So my first question, of course, is the state of your collection. What we want to curate, what we want to do is make sure that we collect games that we're going to be able to play solo, that we're going to be able to play with a group, and that games that are going to hit that rotation. The way my board gaming group works is sometimes ahead of time we say, hey, this Saturday, let's get together and play some TI. Let's make it happen. Let's do it. And other times we don't really know what we're going to play, but we have a couple of hours. So everybody brings 2 or 3 board games. Some heavy, some light, some Euro, some Ameritrash, whatever 3 board games you want to bring. And we kind of make a collective decision in that moment. So what dungeon crawler would I bring to the group to play? My recommendation, Descent 2nd Edition. And the reason why I say Descent 2nd Edition as compared to, say, something like Dark Souls, or something compared to, say, Gloomhaven. Gloomhaven is really hot right now. Or something as complex, I consider it kind of a dungeon crawl. It kind of skirts that line a little bit. Something like Kingdom Death Monster. The reason why I say Descent 2nd Edition is because it hits every major point of a dungeon crawler just well enough. Certainly other crawlers do certain areas better. Certainly certain crawlers offer a more narrative, or you could say better gaming experience in specific areas, character development or exploration. But Descent gives you enough on the major topics that overall it's a fun, light, fast game to play. Something that hits the table a lot because anyone can get behind it. So my recommendation on the list and why. We're looking at Descent 2nd Edition Core. Core plus the card pack, which I'm spacing right now on it, too many board games, but there's a card pack that is going to automate the AI and kind of randomly generate dungeons, and the Road to Legend app that lets you take your collection, and the computer, or the phone, I should say, or the tablet, will play the role of the Overlord, and you can play in a co-op mode. So from this perspective, the core plus these 2 other things allow you 2 unique gaming experiences. When you feel slightly competitive, you can go in as Overlord and go against the other players and kind of get that experience. Or if you're feeling as a group, to kind of go in, play, and go against an AI, an automated Overlord. So you have those 2 options on there. Descent certainly has a lot of expansions. And if you're like me, if you're a completionist, that's a dangerous place to be. That said, the core, and sometimes we play with expansions, sometimes I play the expansions, but the core has given tremendous value, tremendous replayability, the ability for the missions, the campaign, to generate random dungeons, not to mention just the fan content that's downloadable. You could play that for a long, long time, and I have. So the things that Descent does right: character progression. You start out, you pick a character, you pick a class, you gain abilities as you go. You have certain abilities that you can change and manipulate dice. Descent uses power dice, dice with different symbols that determine the range, the damage, and what you can activate to boost damage. It is a little bit swingy. There is a little bit of randomness in there, but these dice power your ability to use special abilities. So it's kind of interesting to figure out, what am I going to use? How is it going to go? You roll dice. Sometimes you get a sudden surge and you take out more minions than you think, and that opens up the flow of the game. Sometimes your powers aren't as powerful, so you have to be a little more conservative. The randomness, I find it works very, very well. Now, some of you out there, more Eurogamers that are interested in collecting wood and ore and sheep and just rolling the same thing every time and moving the same place every time, it's not as bad as it sounds. It's not like it's Talisman. And you guys know that I love Talisman. It offers enough randomness in the decision-making process, not only for you, but for the AI or the Overlord. It keeps the tactics fresh. As your characters level up, as they progress, naturally you gain more abilities and you go deeper into the class. It does it pretty quick. You level up pretty fast over the campaign. That makes it interesting because in every play session, you're both the same character, assuming you pick the character that you enjoy playing. You know, a dwarf berserker. I love playing a dwarf berserker. So you have your same character, but it's fresh. The tactics are new and different every single time. Exploration. You lay down the tiles, monsters spawn, you kind of know where you have to go and what you have to do. Sometimes there's hidden elements, sometimes they're not. The dungeons tiles tend to be a little bit smaller. So we're not talking about like, a sprawling multi-level dungeon or Descent First Edition, which I also enjoy and have. It's a completely different experience. The dungeons are bigger. Some dungeon crawlers, the dungeons are quite massive. They're interesting, but they're a bear to navigate and make your way through. Descent is just the right size. It's a bite-sized, quick play dungeon crawl. So you get in there, you navigate, you explore, and just as you're like, okay, I've kind of seen enough, boom, the adventure's over. And now you can play another one or kind of have a natural stopping point, an NSP for the night. Loot. Now, look, there has to be loot, right? Some gaming systems, some dungeon crawlers give out a lot of loot, some a little bit of loot. Sometimes there's crafting items. Sometimes there's class-specific items, all good. Descent has search points or places where you can discover treasure. Depending on what you're playing, sometimes it carries over, sometimes it doesn't. The magic items and the treasure is a little bit scaled down and is a little bit generic. But again, in the overall perspective of the game, this isn't a bad thing because it encourages you to use the loot in the actual adventure rather than possibly hoarding it for something else. This, compared with the class abilities, compared with the dice, compared with the Overlord mechanics, leads to a lot of in-the-moment, point-by-point decisions. Minions, lieutenants, bosses. This is where the formula is perhaps a little bit predictable compared to some other dungeon crawlers, but it works. And certainly no spoilers here. You go through, the Overlord, or the AI, has control of some minions, maybe some zombies, some goblin archers. You beat on them, you get some experience, there's a little bit of tactical play, and then you might fight a lieutenant. And ultimately, at the end of the dungeon somewhere, or at the end of the scenario, there's going to be a boss monster. You know it's there. It's not going to be a surprise. You might even be able to guess what it is. But this works because it comes together with the class skills and the loot and the leveling up, where the game slowly creates tension. You know you're going through and you're becoming more powerful with your characters in the party, yet at the same time, you know we're getting close to the end of the dungeon. We're going to face some sort of boss monster. And compared to other dungeon crawlers, which, Descent sprinkles bosses around everywhere, I think this is a good thing because you know in every gaming session there's going to be that epic showdown. It has the dungeon crawling formula down pat, accelerated fast. Pick your class, level up, get some cool abilities, roll some dice, get some loot, explore just enough, see what happens, kick down the door, what's behind, take out the minions, take out the lieutenant, take out the boss, call it a night. The formula works. And again, the standalone is there. You could just add this to your collection and it's a game that you play and part of the board gaming experience that you enjoy. Or if you find with your group as you kind of move on, hey, you can get into the expansions. You can get into the character packs. You can push your Descent collection to something really, really big and something really, really epic. That's a dangerous place to be coming from someone that is a completionist. So that would be my recommendation if you've never played a dungeon crawler before or you're looking to add one to your collection and get it into the rotation. Descent 2nd edition.